The house was quiet when I got home that night, the only sound the soft ticking of the clock on the wall. I tossed my keys onto the kitchen counter and kicked off my shoes, letting out a sigh of relief. It had been a long day and I was more than ready to just collapse in bed, but as I made my way down the hallway I paused, noticing the dim light seeping out from under the door of the guest room. My Uncle Max must have come over sometime during the day. He'd mentioned he might stop by. Something about needing a place to crash for a few days. He usually stayed in hotels when he was in town, but tonight he was here in my home. I hesitated, baiting my lip, then gently pushed the door open. He was lying on the bed, his long frame stretched out comfortably on the neatly made covers. One arm was thrown over his eyes, his chest rising and falling in a steady rhythm. I couldn't help but smile at the sight. He looked so peaceful, so completely at ease, but what drew my attention most was the way his shirt had ridden up, revealing a sliver of his toned stomach and the waistband of his jeans. I stood there staring, my heart hammering in my chest. I knew I should turn around, go back to my own room, and leave him to sleep, but something kept me rooted to the spot, a strange pull that made my fingers itch to reach out and touch. Before I knew what I was doing, I stepped closer, my breath catching as I moved silently around the bed. I wasn't sure what had come over me. Maybe it was the way the soft light highlighted the strong lines of his jaw, or the faint scent of his cologne still lingering in the air. Maybe it was just the exhaustion clouding my judgment, but whatever it was, I found myself kneeling beside him, my gaze fixed on his sleeping face. Uncle Max, I whispered softly, my voice barely a breath. He didn't stir, his breathing stayed slow and even. His lips parted slightly. I bit down on my lower lip, hesitating. If he woke up, what would he think? What would he say? But even that thought wasn't enough to stop me. Slowly, almost tentatively, I reached out, letting my fingertips brush against his wrist. The touch was feather light, barely there, but it sent a shiver racing through me. My heart pounded louder, my throat tight. I watched him closely, half expecting him to wake up, but he didn't move. Emboldened, I let my fingers glide higher, trailing up the length of his forearm, feeling the warmth of his skin, the steady thrum of his pulse beneath my touch. That he shifted slightly, a soft murmur escaping his lips, but he didn't wake. My breath caught excitement and fear wearing within me. What was I doing? This was wrong, so wrong, but I couldn't stop. I didn't want to stop. I leaned in closer, my gaze never leaving his face, my heart racing as I pressed a soft, barely there kiss against his hand. His skin was warm against my lips, the faint scent of his cologne making my head spin. I felt dizzy, breathless, and yet I wanted more. I needed more. Uncle, I whispered again, my voice trembling slightly as I let my lips trail up his arm, placing soft, teasing kisses along the way. Each touch was light, barely a whisper of sensation, but it made my pulse race, heat pooling low in my stomach. That he stirred again, a low groan rumbling in his chest. My heart leapt, panic flaring, but then he sighed, his body relaxing once more, and I exhaled shakily, relief washing over me. Slowly, I let my lips brush higher, kissing up to his shoulder, then hesitating just above the collar of his His shirt was unbuttoned at the top, revealing the strong lines of his throat, the curve of his collar. Bone. I swallowed hard, my gaze fixated on that small expanse of bare skin. What would it feel like to press my lips there, to trace my tongue along the hollow of his throat? The thought made me shiver, heat flooding my cheeks. This was insane. I shouldn't be doing this, but before I could talk myself out of it, I leaned down, pressing my lips softly against his neck. The sound he made was low, almost a purr, and I froze, my breath catching. But then his hand moved, sliding up to cup the back of my neck. My eyes widened, my heart stuttering in my chest as I realized he wasn't asleep anymore. Elia, his voice was rough, thick with sleep, but there was something else there too, something dark and dangerous that made my pulse leap. What are you doing? I stammered, my face burning with embarrassment. I should pull away, I should apologize, run out of the room, pretend this never happened, but I couldn't move. I was trapped by the intensity of his gaze, the way his fingers tightened slightly against my skin, holding me in place. Do you have any idea what you're doing to me? He murmured, his grip firm as he pulled me closer, his lips brushing against my ear. Do you know how long I've wanted this? My breath hitched, shock and confusion flooding through me. Wanted what? This, he growled softly, his other hand sliding down to grip my waist, pulling me up onto the bed beside him. I gasped, my body pressed against his, heat flaring everywhere we touched. I've wanted you for so long, Leah. I didn't think. He didn't finish. Instead, he leaned in, his mouth capturing mine in a kiss that stole the breath from my lungs. The kiss was intense, all-consuming, his lips moving against mine with a hunger that took me completely off guard. I moaned softly, my hands clutching at his shirt as he pulled me closer, his body warm and solid against mine. Uncle Max, I tried to speak, but he didn't let me. His mouth was everywhere, my lips, my jaw trailing down the curve of my throat, each kiss making my head spin. You drive me crazy, you know that, he murmured against my skin, his voice low and rough. His hands were on my waist now, sliding up under my sweater, his fingers brushing against bare skin. I shuddered, my back arching instinctively as he explored, his touch sending sparks of heat racing through me. Tell me you want this, he whispered, his breath hot against my ear as his fingers traced higher, skimming over my ribs. Tell me you want me and I'll stop holding back. The words caught in my throat, my body trembling. Did I want this? Did I want him? My mind was a blur, but my body knew the answer. I leaned into his touch, my eyes fluttering shut as I whispered, I want you. He groaned softly, his grip tightening as he kissed me again, harder, this time more demanding. His hands roamed freely now, pushing my sweater up and over my head, leaving me bare to his gaze. His eyes darkened as he took me in, his gaze burning with something primal. Beautiful, he murmured, his voice thick with desire. So damn beautiful. And then he was on me again, his mouth trailing down my throat, his hands skimming over every curve, every inch of bare skin. I was lost, completely and utterly lost, drowning in the sensation of his touch, the feel of his lips, the sound of his rough voice murmuring my name. Uncle Max. He whispered, his mouth finding mine Again just. Feel the soft morning light filtered through the curtains, casting a golden glow over his sleeping form. I watched him, my heart pounding as the events of the night replayed in my mind. His strong arm was draped possessively over my waist, his body pressed close against mine, and I could feel the slow, steady rhythm of his breathing. It felt surreal being here like this with him, my uncle. It was wrong, every logical part of my mind knew that, but wrapped in his warmth, feeling the steady rise and fall of his chest, I couldn't bring myself to pee away. Slowly, almost hesitantly, I let my fingers trace the line of his jaw, the rough stubbled, sending a shiver through me. I'd never noticed before how handsome he was, how his strong features softened in sleep, making him look almost boyish. He stirred slightly, his brow furrowing as if sensing my touch even in sleep, and I froze, holding my breath. But he didn't wake, not yet. My gaze drifted lower, lingering on the curve of his lips that had been on mine just hours earlier, kissing me, claiming me. A surge of heat washed over me at the memory, and I bit my lip, my fingers trailing down to the hollow of his throat, brushing lightly over his collar bone. I wanted to feel him again, to touch him the way he had touched me, to know every inch of him as intimately as he had known me. Heart racing, I shifted slightly, moving so that I was straddling his waist, my knees pressed into the mattress on either side of him. He murmured something in his sleep, his brow furrowing again, but he didn't wait, not yet. I leaned forward, my hair falling around us like a curtain, and brushed my lips softly against his, a barely there touch that made my pulse quicken. He stirred, his eyes fluttering open, and for a moment confusion flickered in his gaze. Then he saw me, and the confusion melted away, replaced by something dark and intense. Leah, his voice was rough with sleep, aloe husky murmur that sent shivers racing down my spine. His hands slid up to my hips, his grip firm but gentle. What are you doing? I bit my lip, my heart pounding so hard it felt like it might burst out of my chest. I wanted to touch you the way you touched me. His gaze darkened, his grip tightening slightly. You shouldn't. I want to, I whispered, cutting him off slowly. I leaned down, my lips brushing softly against his neck, lingering just below his ear. I felt him shudder beneath me, his hands sliding up to my waist, his fingers digging into my skin. Please, Uncle Max, let me. For a moment he was silent, his body tense beneath mine. Then with a low, frustrated growl he flipped us over, pinning me beneath him. Once more his gaze was blazing, his breath hot and ragged as he looked down at me. Leah, he murmured, his voice a low, dangerous whisper. You have no idea what you're asking. Yes, I do, I whispered, my hands sliding up his chest, feeling the hard muscles beneath his shirt. I know exactly what I want. I want you, damn it, he hissed softly, his eyes darkening further. He leaned down, his lips brushing lightly against mine, teasing me, taunting me. You're going to be the death of me. Before I could respond, his mouth was on mine again, hot and demanding, his tongue sweeping past my lips in a kiss that left me breathless. I moaned softly, my hands sliding up to tangle in his hair, pulling him closer. His hands were everywhere, trailing down my sides, sliding beneath my shirt, his fingers skimming over my bare skin in a way that made my head Spin I arched beneath him my body. Craving more, needing more, please I whimpered against his mouth, my hips arching. Instinctively, please uncle. Max sh, he murmured, his lips trailing down my neck, nipping lightly at my skin. I'll give you what you need. Baby, just be patient. His hands slid lower, tugging my shirt up over my head, leaving me bare. Before him he leaned back, his gaze roaming over me, dark and hungry. God, Leah, he murmured, his voice rough with desire. Your perfect heat flooded my cheeks, and I bit my lip, my pulse racing. I'm not. Yes, you are, he whispered fiercely, his lips brushing softly against mine. You're perfect, so damn perfect. And then he was kissing me again, his mouth moving down over my collar bone, his hands skimming lightly over the curves of my breasts, teasing, tormenting. I gasped, my back arching, my body trembling beneath him. Uncle Max sh, he murmured, his lips trailing lower, his hands sliding down to my waist. Just let me love you, baby, I whimpered softly, my hands sliding up to tangle in his hair as his mouth moved lower, his lips brushing over my skin in a way that made my head spin. He took his time, exploring every inch of me, learning what made me gasp, what made me moan. And when his mouth finally closed over my breast, his tongue flicking lightly against my skin, I cried out, my fingers tightening in his hair. Uncle Max, tell me you want this, he whispered, his breath hot against my skin. His hands slid lower, tracing over the curve of my waist, his fingers brushing lightly against the sensitive skin of my inner thigh. Tell me you want me. I want you, I whimpered, my hips arching instinctively. Please, good girl, he murmured, his mouth moving lower, trailing over my stomach, his hands sliding down to tug at the waistband of my shorts. 'Cause I want you to, baby, so damn much. And then his fingers were there, stroking lightly, teasingly, and I couldn't breathe. His touch was everywhere, sending sparks of pleasure racing through me, making my head spin. Uncle Max shot, he whispered again, his lips brushing softly against my skin. Just let me love you, Leah, let me make you mine. And did I let him touch me, kiss me, hold me? I let him make me his completely and utterly, in every way that mattered. And as we lay there together, our bodies pressed close, I realized something. This wasn't just a forbidden desire. It was love, pure, intense, undeniable love. And no matter what happened next, no matter what the world thought, I knew one thing for certain: I was never letting him go.